Let's talk about money and spirituality. What would a Buddha or a Shiva or a Krishna, what would they have to say about money? Is money the root of all evil, or is the lack of it the root of all evil? If you were to look at it from a Christ-like consciousness, or just a higher state of being, we would all agree that money itself isn't necessarily the root of all evil. It's a great tool for society, right? It's not necessarily the corrupt part. The corrupt part of money is the mind, and not necessarily the mind, but the egocentric, the egotistical part of mind that comes about when it comes to money, right? If you're operating from a place of lack or fear, which is ego, you're not necessarily operating from a place of wholeness, then for sure it's going to be me, me, me. It's going to be all about me, and you're going to try to gain as much money as you can and not have any compassion for anybody else. This is the problem with most politicians, right? Politicians in the government, go a step further, the Federal Reserve, they have control of the money and of the rule and the regulation that comes about with the money and how it's dispersed. And when you put those kind of people in charge, right, a politician, we can all agree, whether you're Republican or Democratic, very much so is in need of power, right, some kind of control. Whether it has to do with money or just the power over individual people or a group of people, right? That's the aim of a politician, is to divide and conquer and gain as much power as they can. So at the root of it, money itself isn't necessarily the evil, if you want to call it that. It isn't necessarily the corrupt part of this. It's the mind itself, and to go a step further, it's the ego. Because remember, mind, like some of my other videos talk about, mind and ego are not necessarily the same thing. It's just when you identify with the mind, and then this conceptualization of yourself causes this illusion of self, and you highly identify with just your own body, which makes you operate from this place of fear and lack, right? This egocentric kind of place. So it's not that money itself is the problem, it's the ego that is the issue, right? Let's take money out of it. Ego would still find some way to just savage and pillage its way through whatever it wanted, right? This is just an intellectual kind of battle, right? You have to look at it like this. Way back, let's just call it the caveman days, in the beginning of our times, you know, it was more so about who was the biggest and the strongest. They had the power, right? And then the more intellectual we got, the more of a mind that we started to attain, you could kind of outwit the bigger monkeys, right? The bigger mammals. So you could kind of set up this game that we're in now, right? This chess game of money, of politics, of the economy, right? Just this smoke and mirror game. It can be very intellectual and not so much a in-your-face kind of deal, right? So that's not to say it's just politicians, right? You're everyday people, me and you. Everybody has this tendency to just obtain as much money as they can. Which again, money itself isn't the issue. You first have to have something before you can give, right? So the desire to create and expand isn't an issue. It's just if that's diluted with this egocentric kind of feeling of lack or fear, and then you want to start taking advantage of other people, right? So your everyday person has this typical greed. It's just magnified when you're in a position of power. And again, it's not to say that that desire itself, right, for expansion is necessarily wrong. It's not. There's nothing wrong with money. There's nothing wrong with expansion. It's just if you're operating from a place of wholeness, right, from a place of compassion. So we can't really say money is the root of all evil. It's the lack of it, because the lack of it causes this illusion of self, this ego, to express itself more so, right? From a place of lack and fear. Especially if it's under the illusion that money status is what's going to make it successful, right? Instead of finding the center in its own being and just going inward in a sense, into awareness instead of just mind. So again, this isn't to say that money is the issue. It has to be the corruption, the egocentric mind behind the use of money that is the problem. It also doesn't help that throughout our modern society, we've been more separated, right? We're put more so in our own little boxes, watching little boxes, and just being told what to think, really. So you don't really have this kind of community, this sense of village, right? I'm going to take care of you, you're going to take care of me. No, we just don't have this sense of, I got to take care of my own family, which is natural when you're put in this situation, but it should almost be like when you go to a festival or some kind of community deal like that, right? Where everybody is taking care of each other. And you can just tell that they're not judging you. They want the best for you. They want for you as they would want for themselves, right? Because you're not necessarily operating from a place of lack or fear. You know, just that environment, that vibe itself takes that egocentric aspect of yourself away. That's why you like to go walking in nature, right? Because the birds, the bees, the trees, they don't have this same egocentric sense of self. It's just not there, and you can feel it, whether you recognize it or not, or if you just did. They don't have that, and that's why you enjoy that. You like going where that sense of ego is not there. You can have that same feeling with money. It's just you can't operate from a place of lack or fear when it comes to obtaining that. And then when you have money yourself, just to be compassionate and aware of others, find ways to help the whole, because they are indeed you as well, right? So, again, leave your comments, your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you think about money. Maybe I'll do one on the origins of it, but yeah. Just thought I would throw that out there from a non-dual kind of Buddhist perspective, a Christ-like consciousness perspective. Money itself is a great tool. It's just the ego that is the issue. So this isn't to say at all that we should just all live in huts and disregard any kind of creative technological advance or any kind of material advance, right? This isn't to say that money and technology is just the devil, you know. There just has to be a balance in between all of it. You know, it's another extreme to say we should just live in huts and not evolve any whatsoever technologically, materially, and just leave it at that. No. With this little monkey mind that we've been given, this creative tool, we just have to balance ourselves with it. We can't let it get out of control. Because even something like, let's say, an iPhone, for example, if you really think about it, is organic in its own sense, right? The materials came from the planet Earth, and the thought of it itself arose from mind, right? This is all a kind of organic, materialistic outbranch of our creativity. It's just a matter of how we mix all of these things and then how we use them, right? So not at all should we just disregard money or technology or any kind of modern advance and just live in huts or just stay in a kind of caveman mentality. That's not it at all. That's just, like I said, another extreme of this, right? I feel like throughout human history, and this has probably occurred over and over and over, where our species has had some kind of technological advance, some kind of material advance, maybe even some kind of intellectual advance, but we never quite got a hold of the ego in that sense, of the egocentric mind, right? And it just destroyed us every single time. You know, there's so much about our past we're not even sure of, and we could have been lied to about. So, who's to say this just hasn't occurred over and over and over, where we maintain some kind of intellectual, modern, materialistic, technological advancement, and we just crash and burn with it every time. And like my other podcast talked about, maybe we haven't ever had a visit from some kind of alien. Maybe every time humans are just amazing and we get to this kind of peak and we just blow it at the end. Because just like the human ego, it has this kind of thickness that has to come about it before it drops, right? It has to ripen like a fruit. Where the ego drops, it has to ripen, it has to become thick and exhausting, enough for you to look into it to see that it is not, and just recognize what your being is, which is love, right? So I feel like society as a whole is just one mind in that way, one ego in that way. And hopefully in our evolution, it just comes to this thickening, this ripening, where as a whole it kind of drops. And the majority of us recognize all the things my videos talk about, right? So just kind of recognize this compassion and this awareness. We have a beautiful gift, the human mind, right? This thinking mind isn't necessarily a curse. It's just a burden if we're not the master of it. If it's the master of us, that's where this conceptualization, this desire arising from lack and fear comes into play. And then it just ruins everything, not necessarily money, Money's not the only tool that ego ruins. It ruins, can ruin technology and just any kind of intellectual advancement, right? You could literally drink too much water, is my point. So, yeah. Again, let me know in the comment section y'all's thoughts on this, and your ideas, your insights. I'm open. You might could change my mind to where I think that it is a bad thing. We don't need money at all. Which I'm not going to say that we need it or we don't need it, but from the get-go, I'm not going to be so quick just to judge it and say, money is evil or the devil. It's not the root of all corruption. The lack of money, if anything, this feeling of lack, this feeling of fear is the root of it all. Which correlates with my other videos, how I talk about, the devil isn't necessarily this entity. It's just the ego, this dominative, I want to divide and conquer everything kind of device, right? And when you're whole, that illusion of self isn't there. So we just can't be a mind about money. And instead of operating from a place of fear, we operate from a place of compassion and see what we can do with that tool. The tool money is then, right? Because you can operate in compassion or you can operate in fear. For example, some people, like my other videos mention, might even be afraid of not being afraid anymore, right? They'll say, well, if we don't care about the starving kids all around the world or the homelessness, then who's going to care? They're operating from a place of fear, of being afraid of not being afraid. And then on the other hand, you can operate from a place of compassion. It's not that you're not worried about those people. You're just not operating from a place of fear, from a place of ego yourself. And like I say all the time, anything that you can do in fear, you can do in love tenfold. You can do in awareness tenfold. So, I don't think it's necessarily money. I think the issue, like always, is the mind, this egocentric mind, this ego that we have. And, yeah, hopefully in the long run, it's not like a 9/11 has to occur where some kind of natural disaster or, modern disaster occurs and that's when we all come together. Because if we keep waiting for these disasters to occur for us to come together, like our past, like how it may have happened in our past, we might just keep destroying ourselves. It may just be too late every single time. And we'll come to find each and every time it's not necessarily the advancement of our technology and our, intellect that needs to go so far. It's the advancement of the knowledge of ourself, of our being, right? Because if you start to know the nature of yourself and your being, you start to understand mind and society in general. You can just relate in a different way. And all of these tools are at your disposal in a different way. No longer are you in front of yourself, I guess you could say. We have to remember, you could have all the money in the world. You could be the richest person in the world, but still be the poorest person in the world. As in, that richest person, Jim Carrey, for example, has all the money in the world, and fame and money isn't what makes you happy. That's not what makes you rich. So that in itself should show you that money, right? Yeah. Another little avenue, another little door. That money itself isn't the issue, because you could have all the money in the world and still have a problem, still have a mind about it, right? You just have to have more, more, more. You just need more. And in that you find that, no outward object will ever fulfill that desire, right? No outward object can ever fulfill desire itself. It's the understanding of desire, the understanding of yourself, and the deep understanding that no outside object can fulfill desire that fulfills desire, that, satisfies that feeling. Which isn't to say you won't have a desire arise again. It just won't be from a place of lack or fear, right? There's a difference between sitting at the table and being present, and then wanting to go on a walk or watch a movie because you can't be present anymore, right? You're just looking away. You're just distracting yourself from being present, and that feeling to go on a walk or watch a movie came from a place of lack. Or you could be totally present with yourself and have this feeling to go on a walk or watch a movie and not look away from the present. You go on that walk, you go watch that movie, but you're still present, right? Because it wasn't from a place of lack. You weren't doing this in a distraction. Which I feel like that's oftentimes why so many people become addicted to the accumulation of money itself, right? It's just another distraction, another game you can play with yourself that, like numbers, doesn't ever really end. So, I think we could all agree in the end, which if you don't, leave a comment in the comment section, that money itself is a great tool. It's not necessarily the issue, and that, like in all cases, it usually comes down to ego. And that egocentric mind. Just this kind of corruption that we have, this greed, this need to dominate and divide everything. Just right into